There is this incredibly romantic idea we all have about packing up our lives, moving across the world, and buying a beautiful high-rise condo overlooking a bustling, neon-lit metropolis. Ho Chi Minh City, for example. The food, the energy, the booming economy. It sounds like an absolute dream. But what happens when that beautiful dream collides with the cold, hard reality of international banking?
That is exactly where the romance usually dies, crushed under a massive mountain of paperwork and compliance regulations. Because moving yourself across borders is one thing. Moving your life savings across borders? That is a completely different beast entirely. It is endlessly fascinating how we live in this hyper-connected, digital world where you can video chat with someone 10,000 miles away in a high definition. Yet transferring the funds to actually buy a home there feels like navigating a medieval fortress.
And that fortress has rules. Very strict, very unforgiving rules. If you get it wrong, you are not just facing a minor inconvenience or a small fee. You could potentially lose your money, or find yourself trapped in a legal nightmare where you own a property on paper but have zero actual rights to it. So today, we are diving deep into the invisible blueprint of cross-border real estate investment. How do you move a massive amount of capital from a United States bank to Vietnam completely legally, entirely above board, and without losing your mind in the process?
Let us start with the absolute foundation, the golden rule of this entire endeavor. When someone is staring at $250,000 or more in their U.S. bank account, the temptation to look for a shortcut is huge. You hear whispers in expat forums about third-party brokers, crypto transfers, or the so-called gray market where someone hands you cash locally if you transfer funds to their account back home.
Which sounds incredibly convenient on the surface. What is the reality of taking that route?
The reality is that taking a shortcut like that is the financial equivalent of building a skyscraper on quicksand. It might look perfectly fine on day one, but it is absolutely guaranteed to collapse. The non-negotiable golden rule is that every single cent must flow through official, licensed, commercial banking channels. There is a very specific, deeply ingrained reason for this, and it all revolves around a concept known locally as the Pink Book.
The Pink Book. That sounds almost whimsical, like something out of a fairy tale. What exactly is it? And why does it dictate how the money has to move across the ocean?
It does sound like a children's story, but it is the single most powerful document you can hold in Vietnam as a property owner. It is the official government certificate of land use rights and ownership of houses. If you want your name printed on that Pink Book as a foreign buyer, the Vietnamese government needs to see exactly how your money entered the country. If you use a shadow broker to magically make local currency appear in Ho Chi Minh City, the government looks at that transaction and says, "We have no official record of this capital entering our economy legally. Therefore, no Pink Book for you." And worse, if you ever want to sell that condo and take your monies back to the United States, you are completely locked out of the system.
So it is essentially a closed-loop system. The exit door only opens if you use the official entrance. How does one actually walk through that front door? What is the mechanical process of getting the funds from a bank in New York or California to a developer in Ho Chi Minh City?
You need to set up what is essentially a highly regulated landing pad for your capital. As an expatriate, you cannot just wire money directly into the abyss or hand it straight to a developer. You must work with a licensed bank in Vietnam. This could be a major local institution like Vietcombank or BIDV, or an international branch like HSBC or Standard Chartered. You open a capital account, specifically designed for indirect investment, which usually includes a foreign currency account and a local Vietnamese dong account alongside it. You wire your US dollars directly from your American bank to that foreign currency account in Vietnam. The bank then acts as the official gateway, converting those dollars into local currency to pay the property developer or the seller.
That sounds relatively straightforward in theory, but I imagine the details matter immensely. I have felt the anxiety of hitting the send button on a standard wire transfer. Doing it internationally for a life-changing amount of money must be terrifying. You cannot just send a wire transfer with a memo line that says Condo stuff, right?
Exactly. Precision is everything in this phase. When that wire originates in the U.S., the stated purpose of the transaction must be explicitly tied to the property. You have to list the project name, the exact unit number, and the specific nature of the purchase. It is like coding a complex piece of software. One missing semicolon and the whole program crashes. The central bank is monitoring these flows, and ambiguity is the absolute enemy of compliance. You are creating a permanent record that proves your intent from the very first second the money moves.
This brings up a really interesting philosophical point about global mobility. We tend to think of capital as this fluid, borderless energy that can instantly travel anywhere. But when it touches physical dirt, when it becomes real estate, suddenly national sovereignty kicks in hard. Which leads perfectly into the invisible barrier every foreign buyer eventually hits, the foreign quota. What exactly is the ceiling on this?
It is a fascinating intersection of economics and sociology. Vietnam wants to welcome foreign investment, but it also has a fundamental duty to protect its domestic sovereignty and its local citizens. Vietnamese law dictates that foreigners can own a maximum of 30% of the units in any single condominium building. It is a protective measure designed to ensure that locals are not entirely priced out of their own neighborhoods by a sudden flood of overseas wealth.
30%. That is a hard mathematical cap. What happens if an eager buyer does not check the math, wires the money for a beautiful penthouse, only to find out the building is already at its 30% limit?
They enter a profound legal purgatory. If that quota is full, you cannot legally own the unit, period. Your money might be sitting in a foreign account. The developer might have even accepted it, but the government will absolutely not issue the pink book. You are left holding a very expensive, totally unenforceable contract. It is a stark reminder that in international real estate, you are not just buying an apartment. You are buying a highly regulated position in a very complex legal queue. You must verify the quota before a single dollar leaves your American account.
It is like trying to buy a VIP ticket to a sold-out concert, but the bouncer lets you pay the cover charge anyway, only to lock you out of the actual auditorium. So assuming you get the unit, you are well within the 30% quota, and the money arrived beautifully and legally. Let us fast forward. 5 or 10 years from now, the buyer decides to sell. They want to repatriate the funds back to the US. You mentioned the exit door earlier. How do you ensure it actually opens when you need it to?
By becoming an obsessive, uncompromising archivist. I really cannot stress this enough. Financial time travel requires a flawless paper trail. When you sell that property, the government will ask for undeniable, documented proof that the original funds came from abroad. You need every single inbound wire transfer receipt. You need the original, fully executed sales and purchase agreement. You need every tax receipt showing you paid your dues over the years. If you lose those documents, your capital is essentially trapped in the local economy. The government needs to know that the money leaving is the exact same money that entered, plus legitimate appreciation.
It is almost poetic when you think about it. The very bureaucracy that feels so burdensome and heavy on the way in becomes your only salvation on the way out. It is a relationship of trust built entirely on paper.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. Trust in international finance is never a handshake. It is a meticulously organized binder of stamped documents. This is exactly why attempting to navigate this entire ecosystem alone is incredibly risky. The framework is standardized at the national level, but the local nuances in a massive, rapidly growing city like Ho Chi Minh are vast.
which means bringing in a local legal professional is not just an optional luxury, it is an absolute necessity. I imagine a local lawyer does significantly more than just translate the contract from Vietnamese to English.
They are your navigator through a maze that is constantly shifting. A good local legal firm will audit the developer before you even sign a preliminary agreement. Do they actually have the legal eligibility to issue the pink book? Are there hidden financial liens on the land itself? They review the sales and purchase agreement to ensure it aligns perfectly with the latest municipal regulations. Paying a professional to verify everything before you initiate a massive international wire transfer is quite literally the cheapest, most effective insurance policy you will ever buy.
It is a remarkable journey. We start with the vibrant dream of a new life in a dynamic Southeast Asian metropolis, sipping coffee on a balcony, and we end up discussing capital accounts, foreign quotas, and archival-level record-keeping. But that is the true reality of our modern, globalized world. The borders are still very much there. They have just moved from physical checkpoints to financial ledgers.
Precisely. The world is open, but it is certainly not frictionless, and the friction is exactly where the risk lies. But if you respect the rules, use the official channels, and document every single step of the journey, that friction becomes the very mechanism that protects your investment. It allows you to actually enjoy that high-rise view without constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering if your ownership is valid.
It makes you wonder, as technology advances and digital currencies continue to evolve, whether these sovereign financial borders will eventually dissolve, or if they will just become more sophisticated and harder to see. Will the concept of buying a home across the world ever be as simple as sending an email? Or is the friction an essential, permanent part of what gives a nation its identity and economic control?
That is perhaps the ultimate question of the next century. As global capital continuously tries to become invisible and frictionless, nations will always build new, more complex walls to make it visible again. The tension between open markets and sovereign control is never going away.
A profound thought to end on. The architecture of capital is just as complex and just as deeply engineered as the physical buildings it constructs. To anyone out there looking to make that leap and buy a piece of the future in Ho Chi Minh City, remember, respect the plumbing of the financial system, keep absolutely all of your receipts, and always use the front door.